Hi, Bert. How are you?
Doing just great, Doug. Thanks for having me on. How about yourself?
Oh, doing all right. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I had to read your bio a couple of times because anybody who was, I'm not saying I'm dyslexic, but anybody who is dyslexic would have to look at this twice because it says, at 16, you quit your job as a farmhand to work for your father as a framing apprentice. When I read that the first time, I thought it said farming apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
So timber framing is what you're doing, right?
Correct.
Is this referencing building houses? I mean, like that kind of framing?
Yes, if you were to go back a few thousand years, that's how they used to frame all the time. And timber framing is with the big chunky beams and the posts, and especially refers to when they didn't have nails, as opposed to nowadays, most homes are built with stud wall construction, so two by fours, two by sixes.
Right. Okay, why don't you explain then what it is that you're doing? So you're making, I mean, I'm having this picture of holes drilled in logs and using like wooden pegs to connect them and something like that.
Exactly. It's it's not log home construction. It's post and beam or timber framing. Sometimes people say exposed beam construction. And if you think of like a ski lodge, kind of these big heavy timbers and posts, or sometimes old buildings in England, Germany, these old cathedrals, there's an example of timber framing. And if you were to travel up and down the East Coast where the colonies were, the building method when America was founded was predominantly timber framing.
I've probably seen a lot of them, but I just having trouble picturing something in my head that I can remember. Is there anything famous that we might know?
Well, there was a movie, I believe it was called The Shining,
Oh yeah, sure.
and that was filmed at Timberline Lodge. And so that was a project that was done with the CCC during the Great Depression, and we actually had a chance to put a little bit behind the Timberline Lodge story. We did a project that was a mini replica of the lodge, a hexagon wayfinding sign. It's a 40-foot tall gazebo, big gazebo, down off the main highway where the Timberline Road goes up to Timberline Lodge. But that's a beautiful place. Love the architecture, big heavy timbers.
The word hybrid is also in here too.
Mm-hmm.
Hybrid timber framing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's significant with the hybrid?
So if you were someone who was attracted to the look and feel of exposed beams and wanted to personalize your home or maybe a pavilion or even an office space using exposed beams, the chances are you wouldn't want to go back 3,000 years and do it the old way. You would probably like to use some of today's building systems and then use the beams where it counts, where you can be expressive, say like for an entry or a great room or back patio. And so hybrid really refers to mixing conventional modern day building techniques with the timbers and the old techniques used back in the day. So you get some big, heavy art, so to speak.
So, what size are these timbers? Are they like 6 by? Are they like railroad ties? I mean, that's kind of what I'm
A railroad
picturing.
tie is usually an 8 by 8.
Okay.
That's a railroad tie, and it seems thicker when it's a short piece of wood. And wood, it always shrinks in perspective or how big it feels the higher it gets off the ground. So, like for example, a common size is 8 by 12, but that's not really big. But maybe we've had some jobs where we've got like a 10-inch wide by 24-inch tall by 30 some foot long beam, and those are gargantuan in beams, and especially so when they're in the shop and on sawhorses and you're moving around them. I always I get a little bit of a my heart skips a beat often when I design something up on the 3D modeling program, get it looking just perfect. And then when I walk through the shop and I see this project going on and is it really that big? Because it's on sawhorses and not. It's that bites me time and time again, but it's part of the process and I've learned to trust it, but still sometimes I wince, but it's a good thing. It's a lot of fun.
You've got to use cranes or something to lift these things, don't you?
Usually, yes. There are times where there's remote sites or sites that are hard to get to. And then there's a lot of different ways to do it. You know, back in the day, they figured out how to build cathedrals and build pyramids without cranes. So we've always been able to figure something out. I mean, the biggest tool is between our ears, doing it safely, figuring out how to get it done. But you're right. A crane or a forklift, when feasible, that's the tool of choice.
Well, back in the day, they had slave labor, so we're not doing that anymore.
You probably won't catch me walking inside of a drum, the Middle Ages version of a crane.
So one of these 8x12, they got to weigh, what, 1,000 pounds at least, yeah?
Yeah, it depends on the beam. If you're going to hit the 1,000-pound mark, you've got to be a 10 by 20 by 20 or something.
Wow. Yeah.
But still, I mean, you start getting some weight like that, and it's bulky. I mean, we've learned to watch our fingers and protect edges and get coordinated, and you know, the equipment then with the straps, and we've got, of course, a crane in the shop as well.
I got a kick out of some of your talking points on your sheet. They were pretty hilarious. So I wanted to hit on a couple of them.
Okay.
The 4 levels of ugly.
4 levels of ugly.
And how does this tie into being happy? Can't wait for the answer to this one.
Okay, so that was captured in the first book we wrote. Now we've got a second edition coming out, and it still has that 4 levels of ugly. We got some good feedback on that. And just to be really simple about it, there's 2 ways to win with timber framing. One is the aesthetic beauty and getting things right, following some golden triangle or golden rectangles and balance and what people are looking for, capturing that right look and feel. That would be level 4 of ugly. Okay, the other 3 levels are arguably much more important because they have to do with our well-being and everything we're trying to accomplish in life, which is very subjective. And so the 4 levels of ugly, one is in our thinking, you know, what are we paying attention to? Another is in our actions, and then our communication and relationships. So those are the 3 big ones that come before the aesthetics and the level of ugly that we're routinely called in to fix. And what we've noticed is that when people have the first 3 levels of ugly beautified, so to speak, then the projects really seem to go smooth, and it's easier time to get on the same page, understand what people are trying to do. And then when there's hiccups and miscommunications and that, it's not like the world comes to a screeching halt. It's like, okay, well, how can we make lemonade out of lemons? And there's just kind of a calm accepting. I don't know if accepting is a good word, because that people want what they want, but there's always a way to make things good, and it starts between the ears. So ugly is found between the ears for sure.
So when you're referring to ugly, you're referring to the clients or the actual building that you're making for them? Because it sounds like you're more referring to the client.
Well, the client mindset.
The client mindset.
Attitude, communication, relationships. That whole piece of it is going to make a project fun or just a grind to get through, if you know what I mean.
Okay, yeah.
And so that would be the first 3 levels of ugly that you found humorous. The 4th level is the book has got like 7 different timber styles, and there's kind of some do's and don'ts regarding aesthetics, making sure it doesn't overpower or underwhelm the context and where the timbers are placed. There's a lot of these pieces that feels really good when we can get it right for clients, and especially good when people are when their headspace is good. The couple, a lot of times we're working for a couple, when they're on the same page and they're not at odds with what they're trying to accomplish, and when they're communicating nicely and they've got a good relationship, that kind of bleeds over to us and makes our work that much more enjoyable.
Is the entire house made out of these type of timbers, or are these timbers really for decorative purposes?
So that's where the hybrid comes in. The hybrid means that we can use them to a greater or lesser degree depending on
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
what kind of look people want, and then B, what kind of investment they're looking to put down for that.
I can imagine they're not cheap, those
Nope.
giant things. So, in other words, somebody could build a traditional house, and let's just say they make a great room and they want a couple of huge exposed beams or something for aesthetic purposes, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
you could
Yep.
do something like that.
Yep. It is aesthetics because it's going to cost more, but it does 70% of the time what we're doing is load bearing. So it's reducing some of the normal framing package, if you will.
Yeah, that would make sense to have those as load bearing with the size of them.
Hmm.
They'd have
Yeah.
to be able to just handle their own load, let alone any other, right?
Yep. There's when we do put beams in where it makes sense for logistics or sometimes for cost reasons where the beams are totally aesthetic, then the only thing we have to consider is how much they weigh and what holds them up. And when which is less of a concern than you'd think, even though these beams, if you were to pick up a beam, it would feel heavy to us, but in the context of the whole weight of the building and loads, it's pretty minuscule.
So your book is called The Art of Hybrid Timber Framing. Is
Correct.
that the one your new book?
Hmm.
Okay. So if I was interested in building a house and using these kind of timbers, would I benefit to read your book?
Yeah, I can got it here. See if we can get it up for a nice
Oh yeah,
shot screen.
great.
So you can see there's 3 styles on the bottom, and that's 3 of 7. And then on the back, there's more styles,
Oh
and
yeah.
those are
Okay.
captured in the second part 2 of the book. There's 3 parts, and really, it's for getting that right look and feel. This is one of a kind as far as timber framing books go. There's a lot of books that delve into engineering, into all the different types of joinery and nuances that way. This one here, if you're gonna put a category on it, it's how do you get the right look and feel using exposed beams or timber framing that's going to fit you and how rustic you want it to be or how elegant, and really a personalized way to personalize space and make it feel magnetic and warm and a reflection of you in many different ways.
How many have you done so far?
Projects,
Yeah.
it's averaged about 100 a year. Last
Oh
year they were
wow.
bigger projects. We only did 75, and by the time I got up, so I probably a good 10 years at 100 a year. And then the years I started in 2002 after a client asked me to do some timber framing, and I was framing traditional stick built homes at the time, framing contractor.
Yeah.
And I said, well, timber framing, what's that? And so he kind of waved his arms and told me about it. And I said, well, let me think about it. So I went to the library and found some books on it. So this was in 2002. Found some books on it, kind of flipped through the pages and thought, man, this could be a lot of fun, and kind of fell in love with it. And then, that the rest is history, as they say.
The rest is history, yeah. Bert, we do have to wrap this up. Unfortunately, our time is up. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Sure. That would be arrowtimber.com, like bow and arrow.
So can you spell that out? Because we'll put it up.
So yeah, ARROW, T as in Tom, IM, B as in boy, ER.com.
Great. And people can contact you through the website?
Contact through the website, and this book is going to be available in about a month. It's going to launch off and it's on Amazon now for pre-order.
Oh, it is? Okay, great. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This was interesting.
Well, thank you, Doug. Thanks for the good questions.
Something new for our show. So a very unique guest you were.